What if I told you that the 5 most common money rules your parents taught you, the ones everyone agrees are true, are actually costing you tens of thousands of dollars? Not because your parents were trying to hurt you, but because they were playing a game with rules that no longer exist. In this video, I'm going to break down 5 specific financial lies that your parents genuinely believed, and probably still believe, and show you what the actual data says instead. These aren't opinions. Every claim I make is backed by research from the Federal Reserve, the New York Fed, ADP, Charles Schwab, and peer-reviewed studies. Here's the thing nobody talks about. Your parents grew up in one of the greatest economic booms in human history. Between the 1980s and 2000s, home prices were reasonable, college cost a fraction of what it does now, and if you stayed at a company long enough, they'd actually promote you and give you a pension. That world doesn't exist anymore. But the advice stayed the same. Financial psychologists actually have a name for this. They call them money scripts. Unconscious beliefs about money that we absorb as children and carry into adulthood. Dr. Brad Klontz, a financial psychologist, has identified that these scripts operate below conscious thought and drive our behavior, often directly against our stated financial goals. Your parents didn't just teach you how to manage money. They installed an operating system. And some of that software is now outdated. Lie number 1. Renting is throwing money away. Your parents said it. Your grandparents said it. Everyone at every dinner party says it. Why are you throwing money away on rent when you could be building equity? It sounds so obvious that nobody questions it. But the data tells a completely different story. Nobel laureate Robert Shiller, one of the most respected economists alive, found that when you adjust for inflation, U.S. home prices have no meaningful long-term upward trend. Most of what looks like appreciation is just inflation. And researchers at Florida Atlantic University, Florida International University, and the University of Wyoming ran the numbers across decades of market data. They're finding: in most American markets, homeownership actually underperforms renting and investing the difference. Here's a number that might surprise you. The Money Guy show calculated that at today's mortgage rates of around 6%, renting and investing the difference comes out ahead by roughly $120,000 over 10 years. And Zillow data shows that in 2024, renting was 37% cheaper than buying across all 50 of the largest metro areas. Now, you might say, but homeowners are 40 times wealthier than renters. That stat is everywhere. And it's true. But it's what statisticians call a selection effect. Who can afford to buy a home? People who already have stable incomes and the discipline to save for a down payment. The wealth gap has nothing to do with the house. If you control for income and savings habits, it basically disappears. Does buying sometimes make sense? Absolutely. If you're going to stay in one place for 7+ years, if rates are low, and if you've run the actual math, buying can be the right call. But the default assumption that buying is always better and renting is always wasteful. That's not financial wisdom. That's a marketing slogan that the real estate industry has spent $50 billion reinforcing. And that's not even the most expensive lie on this list. Because lie number 2 might be costing you more every single year. Lie number 2. Stay loyal to one company and you'll be rewarded. This one was actually true for your parents. In their era, company loyalty meant pensions, regular raises, and a real shot at climbing the ladder. Today, it often means the opposite. According to a 2024 ADP Research Institute study, employees who switched companies earned an average salary increase of 7.7%. Those who stayed, just 5.3%. Pew Research found an even bigger gap. Job switchers saw 9.7% wage growth versus 4.3% for those who stayed put. And here's the math that really hurts. Investopedia calculated that on the U.S. median salary of about $62,600, switching jobs nets you roughly $2,300 more in the first year alone. Over 5 years, the loyal worker has earned about $13,300 less. That's more than 2 years of groceries gone. Because you were loyal. And it gets worse. ADP data shows that 75% of workers leave their employer before ever receiving a promotion. Only 17% of workers were promoted by their current company over the last 5 years. Now, to be fair, there's a nuance here. For the top 5% of earners, staying loyal actually does pay off. A 2026 Bank of America study found that top earners who stayed got double-digit pay raises. But for everyone else, the data is pretty clear. The system is structurally designed to underpay people who stay and overpay people who arrive. Your parents' advice wasn't wrong for their era. But in today's market, loyalty has a price tag. And it's about $13,000 per half-decade. Which brings us to the lie that your parents pushed the hardest, and the one where the data is the most complicated. Lie number 3. A college degree guarantees success. Let me be clear about something. College is still a good investment for most people. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York found that the typical college graduate sees a median 12.5% return on their degree. That beats the stock market. College graduates earn about $80,000 a year versus $47,000 for high school graduates. Over a lifetime, that gap compounds dramatically. But here's what your parents didn't tell you. Because they didn't have to know it. About 25% of college graduates see little to no return on their degree. They end up earning less than $10,000 more than the median high school graduate. And 23% of four-year degree programs have negative return on investment, meaning students who enroll in those programs generally can't expect their earnings to rise enough to offset the cost. The average student graduates with $29,300 in debt. Total outstanding student debt in America: $1.6 trillion. And the college wage premium, the gap between what degree holders and non-degree holders earn, is shrinking. The San Francisco Federal Reserve found it peaked in the mid-2010s and has declined by 4 percentage points since. Between 2020 and 2024, young high school graduates actually saw 9.4% real wage growth, while college graduates saw just 2.2%. Your parents' generation could work a summer job and pay for a semester. Today, the total cost of a four-year degree is about $180,000. The lie isn't, college is worthless. The lie is, college is always worth it, regardless of what you study, where you go, or whether you finish. For a quarter of graduates, that blanket advice cost them years of their life and tens of thousands of dollars. Now, if your parents didn't push college, they probably pushed something else. Something that sounds even more responsible. Keep your money in the bank. Cash is king. Let me show you why that advice might be the quietest way to lose money. Lie number 4. Cash is king. Keep your money in savings. Don't invest what you can't afford to lose. Better safe than sorry. This advice comes from a good place. And for short-term emergencies, absolutely. You need 3 to 6 months of expenses in cash. That's non-negotiable. But treating cash as a long-term wealth strategy, that's where the math gets ugly. The S&P 500 has historically returned about 10% per year before inflation. A high-yield savings account might get you 4% in a good year, and in many years, it's been under 1%. Meanwhile, inflation, even when it's low, is steadily eating your purchasing power. If you have $20,000 sitting in a bank account today, that money will buy significantly less in 20 years. Not because you spent it, but because you didn't let it grow. The phrase, cash is king, was popularized by a Volvo CEO during the 1987 stock market crash. It was crisis advice, not a life strategy. But somewhere along the way, it became a permanent philosophy. Your parents saw market crashes and decided the safest move was to stay in cash. What they missed is that the market recovered from every single one of those crashes, and the people who stayed invested came out dramatically ahead. And now we get to the biggest lie. The one your parents probably still believe right now. Lie number 5. The inheritance will take care of everything. Here's a story that happened to a real family. A grandmother had $250,000 in assets, retirement savings, and the proceeds from selling her home. Her grandson was told he'd inherit all of it. After 8 years of assisted living and nursing home care, the inheritance was $2,000. That's not an outlier. That's the most common form of inheritance in America. Charles Schwab released a study in January 2025 that found nearly 45% of boomers said they want to enjoy their money while they're still alive. Only 22% of boomers expect to leave an inheritance, while a third of millennials are counting on receiving one. According to a government report, about 70% of people over 65 will need significant long-term care, and nursing home care can cost nearly $10,000 a month. The CFP board surveyed Gen Zers in 2025 and found that 95% say their financial regrets have cost them real money. 48% estimate their missteps cost them at least $100,000. And the biggest regret? Not planning for retirement earlier. Your parents aren't being malicious. They just grew up in an era where pensions existed, homes were affordable, and a single income could support a family. Their financial map was drawn for a different world. So here's the truth. Your parents gave you the best advice they had. It just wasn't built for the world you're living in. The economy changed. The rules changed. And the financial advice didn't update with it. That doesn't mean everything they taught you was wrong. It means you need to question the defaults. Run the actual math. And build a financial strategy based on today's reality. Not 1985's. If this video made you rethink even one thing you were taught about money, hit subscribe. Because I cover the stuff that traditional financial media won't, the real rules behind how money actually works.